Hello everyone, welcome to Marie's Country Life YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk about garden raised beds and ground level gardens. It's definitely garden season and many of us are preparing our garden spots. One basic thing that comes to mind when preparing a garden is whether to till and prepare the ground or make raised beds or framed garden beds. Raised beds are becoming more popular, but do they really make sense for the garden? What benefits do they provide? Will they grow more food than the conventional ground-level gardens? In this video, I will try to share the pros and cons of raised bed gardens and in-ground or flat-level garden so that you can make an informed decision and decide on what is best suited in your area and most importantly, what meets your garden goals. But first, the question is, what is a raised bed? The term raised bed is a bit confusing. If you add a few inches of soil to a garden bed that is at ground level, it is a raised bed. Similar to hugelkultur style of gardening, it is considered a raised bed garden without a frame containing the organic matter. But when most people talk about raised beds for vegetable growing, they mean a bed that has been raised with wood lumber walls, concrete blocks, or galvanized or corrugated metal sheets surrounding the soil. Sometimes it's called a garden box or framed bed. In this video, I'll use the term raised bed to mean a garden bed that has walls, and I'll compare it with a traditional bed that is ground level. A traditional garden bed may or may not be raised above ground, but it is usually about 5 inches and not raised more than 6 inches, for the purpose of hilling up the garden plot, to define the garden area, or to make it more distinct, and for drainage purposes. Many small gardeners make good claims for using raised beds, but we have to understand that most home gardeners have limited areas for gardening, and many people don't like to till or take the time to do extensive labor in developing the ground. So most likely, these are a few of the reasons for backyard gardeners to opt for raised beds. In reality though, we need to understand the real value of raised beds compared to the intensive gardening done on level ground or in-ground by comparing both styles of gardening using intensive cultivation. There are many factors that affect one's decision-making: location, budget, skills and motivation, time and effort to accomplish both raised beds and in-ground gardens. So, let me start with the positive side of raised beds. There are some legit reasons for using raised beds. First, the garden looks nice and neat. The walls keep soil in place and pathways can be kept cleaner. Second, they can be used in areas that have very poor soil, contaminated soil, or no soil at all. You can use different types of soil, allowing you to match soil to crop needs. Similarly, containers are considered small raised beds. Third, positive side of raised beds. They warm up quicker in spring, allowing earlier planting. Fourth reason, it's easy to maintain and you'll have to deal with fewer weeds. Fifth, it's more ergonomic. They can be great for people with disabilities. They require less bending to work on the plants. Sixth, drainage can be better in areas with very poor drainage, but raised beds can also be cause of drainage problems. Seventh, it's easier to exclude pests. Raised beds can deter small critters from climbing up and down and eating your plants. Bottoms can be screened to keep gophers and voles out. 8. It helps keep kids and pets from stepping onto plants. And now, here are some of the good reasons for not using raised beds. These are the negative side or the con side of having raised beds. First, they cost money to build. You'll have to buy the materials to make the raised beds. Second, you have to buy soil unless you have high spots in your yard that you want lowered. The third reason to not use raised beds is it's less sustainable since you need to buy and transport walls and soil. The fourth reason is potential chemicals leaching from the materials you use to build the walls, and you don't want the chemicals in your plants that you're going to eat. Fifth, soil does not keep soil moisture and temperature well. In summer, soil in raised beds gets hotter and dries out much faster, so plants require more watering. In winter, soil gets colder and will freeze easily, so perennial plants need to be hardier to withstand extreme temperatures. The sixth reason is plant roots will have less room to grow out and plants can get root bound easily. Seventh, limited planting space. Limited shapes and curves, so you cannot grow lots of tall plants and spreading or viney plants. Eighth, the rows between beds need to be wider if you plan to use a wheelbarrow with taller walls. Ninth, taller raised beds with more than 12 inches tall is challenging to taller folks. The number 10 downside of having raised beds is that drip irrigation is more difficult to install, especially if you use the drip tape irrigation. Number 11, you will need to replace the raised bed frame when it deteriorates eventually, which will cost money, time, and effort. And imagine the soil mess that you have to deal with when replacing the frames you use. Number 12, raised bed is more of a permanent structure, so if you want to turn your yard back into a regular playground again, the removal and the cleanup part take more time and effort. So there you have it. You hear the pros and cons of having raised bed garden. Now let me share with you the pros and cons of in-ground or ground level garden. Let me say first the cons or the negative side of having in-ground garden. First, it takes time to prepare the area to garden, especially if you have rocky soil. Second, it takes time to build the soil quality. Depending on the size of your garden plot, you will need lots of soil amendments to raise your soil quality, which will cost more money. Third, it is harder to control weeds, and who likes weeding a big garden? Fourth, it is challenging, especially for people with disability. It's hard on the back with bending and standing that could trigger physical pain. The fifth, the last but not the least, negative side of having in-ground garden is that the potential drainage issues, especially on low-lying ground. So these are 5 of the known downside of having in-ground garden. Now let me share with you the pros or the positive side of having ground-level garden or the in-ground garden. First, having in-ground garden is more economical as you don't need to buy materials to make frames. You won't need wooden boards or galvanized metal sheets. Second, you can design your gardenscape easily and nicely according to your desired size and length or style. Third, the native soil in your garden spot is readily available that you can plant right away without adding all of the soil amendments needed immediately. You can just add other amendments as you go along with gardening. Fourth, you can plant different varieties of upright plants, spreading or climbing vines without having to worry about height and space. The fifth positive side or the good side of having ground level garden is that ground level garden keeps soil moisture longer and better than raised garden with frames. The sixth good reason for having ground level garden is that plant roots can freely grow and spread out and won't get root bound, allowing more soil nutrient absorption and making the plants grow healthier and stronger. To me, this is very important. Number 7, it is easier to install drip irrigation on a more level ground. Number 8 reason is that it is easier to work around with less obstruction in the way, so even folks in wheelchair can go around the garden safely. Number 9 reason, it ensures more production and crop yield with unlimited growing space. Number 10, the last but not the least reason, the ground level garden is easier to till, easier for crop rotation to help improve the soil quality. So there you have it. The different pros and cons I've mentioned in this video are some of the known reasons that common gardeners and farmers can agree upon based on common knowledge and experience. So the question is, are raised beds better? Unless one of the pro arguments is very compelling for you, I recommend gardening on the flat ground. This is especially true if you are a first-time gardener or someone that might move in a few years. Give it a try before spending the extra time and money building walls. The potential benefits of raised garden beds or in-ground gardens largely depends on your unique garden space, native soil, budget, aesthetic preferences, and the prevalence of pests in your area. For my family, the benefits of having ground-level garden outweigh the pros of having raised beds. Having a combination of ground-level garden and raised bed can be worthwhile. We do have a few raised bed or boxed garden that have growing flowers and spices, but the majority of our vegetable plants are grown in ground levels. Just remember that there are several factors to consider in preparing your garden: the location, space, soil quality, the availability of materials, your purpose and goals, and time and effort. Whatever you plan and choose for a garden, make sure that it meets your criteria for gardening. And most importantly, you will be satisfied with the fruits of your labor. Happy gardening! And thanks for watching.